Mr. Dakota?
Here.
Ms. Doherty?
Here.
Mr. Hoey?
Here.
Mr. Lay?
Here.
Ms. Martin?
Here.
Mr. Nutter?
Here.
Mayor Samaras. 6 present, 1 absent.
First order on the agenda is the special order of business to spotlight on excellence, the Robinson School Stranger Sagas Young Writers Competition. Madam Superintendent?
Thank you. It's my favorite part of the meeting, recognizing our students. So congratulations to all our students at the Robinson School, and I'm going to turn it over to Ms. Desmond to share with you this great honor.
Thank you. This Spotlight on Excellence is featuring Robinson Middle School students who were recently a part of a selected group of students who were published for the Young Writers Stranger Saga series. And the Robinson School had 48 students who were published. And so I would like to invite up to the podium Mrs. Dowling, the principal of the Robinson Middle School, and Mr. Rossetti, who is the literacy specialist who can explain a little bit more about this wonderful project.
Hi, so Mike Rossetti, instructional specialist at the Robinson. One of the things that we were doing in the fall was we wanted to find a way to bring more writing opportunities to students at the Robinson. So because it was the fall, there was a writing competition that we found called the Stranger Sagas, and it was kind of a takeoff of Stranger Things, which is a Netflix show that a lot of our kids watch. So the idea of the competition was we had students start with a spooky prompt, and with the prompt they wrote short stories, and then any student who submitted a story to the school, we entered them into actually a national competition, and because there were so many entries in Massachusetts, they published one book for just Massachusetts students. We had almost 50 students accepted into publication, and we brought some of those students here to read their stories for you, if that's okay.
That sounds wonderful.
Our first student is Kiana Lise Barros Cantres.
This is called the girl with her dead gothic friend. One day there was a noise coming from the basement and I was too scared to go alone. I asked my friend JJ, which she was a little scary herself because she was a gothic type of girl. We went down the stairs and there were 2 clowns and a poisonous snake. I stood still because there was a dead person with blood on the wall. If I moved, the snake would bite me. I didn't want to have poisonous venom inside me. We ran upstairs, but JJ was dead.
Hopefully there won't be any nightmares. Our second student, Jonathan Porter.
This is called The Guy in Our Basement. There was a noise coming out of the basement, and it was so scary because we knew that no one was down there. We all grabbed some lights and knives to go downstairs with. When we went downstairs, there was no one there, so we went back upstairs and then we heard it again. We stayed downstairs for half an hour and we didn't hear anything in there. We decided to stay downstairs for the rest of the night, and my whole family died except for me and my brother.
Our third student, Lucy Bridge.
This is an extra day. I woke up with a start. My hand flew to the numbers on my arm. I shouldn't be alive. I couldn't be alive. At birth, everyone's arm was tattooed with the date of their death. Mine was yesterday. My eyes darted to my tattoo. It had changed color overnight. Instead of its normal black, it was a violent blood red. I ran my fingers over the date. 10, 13, 3000. Searing pain shot up my arm. I pulled my fingers back. They were smoking. On the bright side, they looked very much intact. What on earth was going on?
And our fourth student, Maggie Fitzgerald.
This is called I Have Plans for You, Kate. Running, running, running. Keep running, Kate. I have to tell someone the truth before it is too late. The trees are going by too quickly. It hurts to breathe. Tears form in my eyes. It's hard to see. Running, running. Kate, Kate. Catherine Hayes. Mom. Katie, wait up. Running. My leather bag full of the dreaded pages constantly hits my leg. I come to the hill. The trees are getting taller. It's almost static. I lift my head up quickly. Did I do it? No. I start running again. I have plans for you, Kate.
So as you can see, we're pretty excited about what our students are capable of. The good thing about this project was that students were able to purchase the book that they've been published in. So we are proud to say that we have published authors at the Robinson Middle School. Thank you.
Do we want to come up and get a picture with the school committee? Thank you so much for sharing those wonderful stories with us, and I would just like to say, keep on writing, right? Mr. Hoey.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to say one thing to the Robinson principal and all the parents and the students. I've said some negative things in the past about the Robinson School not being the way I want it. I have had a lot of phone calls in the past 2 weeks of a lot of people telling me that it's turned around. So I know Ms. Desmond's up there helping out too, but the principal should be very proud of how many people are talking in favor of what you're doing at that school. I'm excited about that, and tonight just shows where the Robinson is heading, and it's heading where I want them, in a good direction, and I want to thank the new principal for how hard she's working. So to all the Robinson students, parents, and the staff, thank you for what you're doing, and I appreciate what's happening right now. Thank you.
Mr. Dakota.
Thank you, Ms. Doherty. Is this book available? How can we get a hold copies of that?
The book is available. You can buy it through, if you want to contact me, I can purchase it and then send it to you.
Okay, good. All right. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you again. So the next item on the agenda is the Blue Ribbon Screening Committee update, and I would ask the chair of the Blue Ribbon Screening Committee, Ms. Martin, to give us that update. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Just to update the committee and the public, we did have the first meeting of the Blue Ribbon Screening Committee last evening at the school department. We have a group of 20 individuals representing a wide range of constituencies across the city and the district specifically. Really a very engaged and committed group of people who I think have really made a very strong commitment to this district and the work of finding our next great educational leader for the City of Lowell Public Schools. Just so you know, kind of the public and again the committee are aware, we were looking at 23 applicants for the position. I think we had a really impressive pool of candidates, which is really encouraging. Last night, the committee went through the work of dividing into 6 different teams who work together in small groups to develop kind of overarching questions around some very specific topic areas: fiscal, budget, HR questions, leadership questions, internal relationships, external relationships. So kind of we could divide up the many different areas that we're really going to be requiring great expertise from our next superintendent. So those small groups developed a series of questions, which is what the Blue Ribbon Screening Committee will use when we do our interviews. We'll be moving forward to schedule our interviews for the week of, I believe it's April 23rd. We'll be meeting for that Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday evenings so that we can give each one of the candidates about an hour and 20, an hour and 30 minutes. It will be a group effort so that everyone who's on the Blue Ribbon Screening Committee will be part of the questioning. We'll be able to have some opportunities for follow-up questions. So the committee will really have an opportunity to kind of put each candidate through their paces so we can make some well-formed decisions moving forward in terms of making the recommendations to the school committee for the finalists that we are looking for. Every member of the Blue Ribbon Screening Committee, I think, has done a really great job of taking in all the many applications. I mean, every application is about 30 pages, so it's a lot of information to get through. A lot of really great, insightful questions as we were kind of going through the process last night. And I think very impressively, there hasn't been a great deal of leaking. Let's just call it that. So a very impressive group of people who've been able to take in a lot of sensitive information and maintain it in a very professional way. So for myself, I'm really looking forward to moving forward with the screening committee through these next stages. And I'm really very confident that we'll be able to bring to this committee some really impressive and inspired candidates for us to make our selections through. As many people know, we have 2 other members of the school committee who are serving on the Blue Ribbon, so if you'd like to add anything that I may have missed, please feel free.
Mr. Hoey?
Yeah, I'd like to add that I think Ms. Martin's doing a great job holding us all together. I think the questions that we'll have for the new superintendent will be awesome. At first I was a little bit of a pessimist on this whole idea, but I'm starting to think that some good things are going to happen. So I think time will tell, but I feel like this Blue Ribbon Committee is doing a great job. So that's all I want to say. Thanks.
Submit that as a report of progress.
Thank you. I wanted to add my thanks also for your leadership on the committee. It's not easy to wrangle 20 people in a room and keep us moving forward, and you've done a good job with that, so thank you for that. So I have a motion by Ms. Martin to accept the report as a report of progress, seconded by Mr. Dakota. All those in favor? Aye? Great. The next item on the agenda is the appointment of Janine M. Durkin as Superintendent of Schools. I'm looking for a motion to approve the appointment of Ms. Durkin. Motion to approve the appointment of Janine M. Durkin as Superintendent of Schools by Ms.
No, but do we have to say the name? As it's a roll call, right, where we say the name of the person we want to select?
There's not other candidates, but you can, yeah.
I mean, if you're...
You can if you want, I guess. There's not other candidates, so we could just do a roll call.
Okay.
Because the motion is to approve the appointment of Janine M. Durkin as Superintendent of Schools by Ms. Martin, seconded by Mr. Nutter, sorry. Roll call.
Mr. Dakota,
Yes.
Ms. Doherty,
Yes.
Mr. Hoey,
Present.
Mr. Lay,
Yes.
Ms. Martin,
Yes.
Mr. Nutter,
Yes.
Mayor Samaras. 5 yeas, 1 absent, 1 present, approved.
Now, if we could have a motion to accept and place on file the minutes of the April 4th, 2019 meeting of the Lowell School Committee. Motion to accept by Mr. Hoey, seconded by Mr. Dakota. All those in favor? Approved. Now we're at permission to enter. Do we have any questions or comments about permission to enter? Mr. Nutter.
It looked like Ms. Turner wanted to go first, so I will, if you had something you wanted to state before we ask the questions, feel free.
I just wanted to make a correction on the Lowell Community Health Center contract. It is actually funded by the Adult Basic Ed State Grant.
Well, you took away my first question. Could you just explain a little more as to what this is, where it would be located?
I think it's on Jackson Street. You mean the actual program itself?
Well, it says to provide an on-site health service clinic. So is that clinic going to be at the health center, or are we hosting it in the adult education?
I believe this is they haven't. I believe they haven't ironed out. Like, I think we give them the grant, we do the contract, and then they determine all the details. I can find out those answers though.
Okay.
More questions, Mr. Nutter?
Not on that one, but on the Bon Marché trust. I did not know that there was any parking related to that contract, because we are charged under our maintenance of effort agreement over $391,000 for parking. So could you explain a little bit what this is for?
Sure. With the lease, we get a certain amount of parking spots with the lease. But when the city increased the rates for parking, the landlord increased our portion of that because it wasn't covered under the lease. The reason we're just submitting this to you is we asked for legal counsel on this from the solicitor's office back in September, but we're now getting the information, so this is why it's included.
Do we know if any of that, I mean, we have this report that we received when we were looking at the maintenance of effort, and we get charged $20,410 for administrative offices for parking. So is any of that deducted, any of what we pay in the lease, this $4,000 or $5,000 deducted?
I can find out. I do know that the offsets, the maintenance of effort portion of parking is for a different garage. It's for the majority of the staff. These parking spots are for the superintendents and assistant superintendents, and it's a different parking garage, and it came with the lease from.
What garage do they park in?
So the staff they park near the high school.
Well, the administrative offices are charged for the Joe Downs garage, the Ayotte garage, and the Leo Roy garage, which I think is the Leo Roy garage is the one on Market Street.
Right. So what we can do now that we are investigating or trying to clarify the details with the maintenance of effort, I could ask for clarity on how many spots, how do they determine it? Maybe it's based upon the number of staff members we have, and if so, if there are some of us that are paying through this, maybe we reduce by that amount, or when we lose staff members throughout the year, do they reduce accordingly? I can find out the details.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Motion to approve permission to enter? By Ms. Martin, seconded by Mr. Dakota. Roll call.
Mr. Dakota?
Yes.
Ms. Doherty?
Yes.
Mr. Hoey?
Yes.
Mr. Lay?
Yes.
Ms. Martin? Mr. Nutter?
Yes.
Mayor Samaras? 6 yeas, 1 absent, approved.
We now have a motion to approve the contract for Jean M. Durkin, as superintendent of schools by Ms. Martin, seconded by Mr. Nutter. Any comments?
Yes.
Mr. Hoey.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Back around February 13th or 14th, one of those 2 days, we had a contract sitting in front of us that was written by our lawyer for Ms. Durkin. And at that time, I would have had no problem with that contract. but then it was pulled back for some reason. We didn't move on it that particular night, and then the city solicitor took over, and she wrote this new contract. And based on what I've seen in this new contract, I cannot vote for that tonight. It just doesn't make any sense to me, and that's all I'm going to say right now. Thank you.
Mr. Lay?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Last meeting we had, we met at the executive meeting, and I voted yes to approve the contract. Now that I have a chance to go further, there are a few things that I missed at that meeting, and one of them is the double pay for the superintendent. Okay, I'm sorry. So I take that. Okay, so there was something that in the contract that I saw and I thought that needs that I didn't like, and there were also a few things that has been changed since the executive session. The two versions that I have, there was some language has been changed, also, I wonder why we need even have a contract. She's here. Well, anyway, and she's leaving very soon. Because there's so many things that are a little bit iffy, so I'm gonna reverse my vote on that on the contract. Nothing against. I approve you as a superintendent. I'm just having an issue with the contract. Thank you.
Mr. Nutter?
You know, the work that has been done by Mrs. Durkin under the most extreme circumstances. I was like Mr. Hoey. I was all set on the contract in February. It was explained to me, I may not agree, but it was explained to me why it was changed, and I fully support the changes because they were minor. This contract is beyond deserving. The amount of time, the amount of effort, the amount of personal sacrifice that this woman has put in for these students in this district is beyond question. And for this school committee, at this point in time, when she has done so much, to nitpick is embarrassing, in my view.
Any other comments, or we'll just go with the roll call vote? Roll call.
Mr. Dakota?
Yes.
Ms. Doherty?
Yes.
Mr. Hoey?
No.
Mr. Lay?
No.
Ms. Martin?
Yes.
Mr. Nutter?
Yes.
Mayor Samaras? 4 yeas, 2 nays, 1 absent, approved.
Now we get to the memorial section of the agenda. Doris A. Welcome, mother of retired Bartlett and Stocklosa School Principal Jackie Travers. Darius Tepp, Lowell Public School student. Jordan Dos Santos, Lowell Public School student. We all rise, please, for a moment of silence in darkened chambers. May they rest in peace. Under motions, we have a motion by Mr. Nutter, based on the city budget the last 2 years supplied by the city manager, in anticipating the city will provide at most approximately $650,000 of the requested $2 million increase in net school spending in the form of an additional cash contribution. School committee directs superintendent to provide report showing savings if we eliminate all preschool programs, adult education, all varsity, JV, intramural athletics programs, and rezoning school district for 2019-2020 school year. Mr. Nutter, do I have a motion? Do I have a second on that motion? Mr. Hoey, Mr. Nutter.
Thank you, Mr. Hoey. First of all, through you to the Assistant Superintendent, Ms. Turner, based on the governor's proposed budget, the city would be getting an additional 7.7 under Chapter 70, and the city's net school spending requirement would go from 47 and change to 49 and change, about a $2.2 million. That would give us a $9.9 million increase. If we were to get the full amount, just that, would we still need to have cuts based on what we know so far?
Based on what we know so far, just put in average raises and an estimated increase to health insurance and just simple things like that, not adding anything for the changes we have to make to accommodate students and classrooms and things like that. I'm still estimating, and it is an estimate because I have to go through and confirm everything, but I'm thinking we're looking close to $3 million, even if we did get the entire amount from the city.
So my motion tonight, if it ever got to the point where we had to make $3 million in cuts, I know that I could pack this place with people who would come and support adult education. They would come and support athletics. But we have a lot of other needy students. The one thing that amazed me the most in my first term here on the school committee is the almost daily updates that we get from the superintendent on the number of students who are transported for mental health issues. And it is not just one section of this city. It is in every section. Is it in every school, from the elementary right through to the high school? One thing that I often hear, especially from city councilors, is we need to live within our means. Well, you have to give us the means by which to live by. Under ed reform, this year, the city is required to provide over $47 million as their contribution to the required net school spending. They gave us 15.7 as a cash contribution. That's 33.5, roughly, % of their total responsibility. Think about that. They're giving us less cash now than they did before ed reform. In 1990, the budget was $40 million from the city and $5 million from the state. In 1980, it was $22 million, and that was an all-cash contribution. And back before ed reform, trash still had to be picked up, schools still had to be maintained, snow still had to be plowed. When you look at that 15.7 million, and then we have to deduct the cost of transportation, that's another $9 million. We are getting from the city in a cash contribution 13% of their required $47 million. If you want us to live within our means, provide us the means to live with. You are providing less cash contribution. We are not looking, there is not one member here who is looking for additional funding. What we are looking for is a more fairer distribution of the required net school spending. That's all we're looking for. We'll live within our means, but you provide the means. When you're providing less cash now than you did before ed reform, it's worrisome. If you look at the history, for 20 plus years, buildings and maintenance were put aside and not kept up with. And now we're doing the same thing, only with actual operating funds that we're not getting. The numbers I put out there today were items that I knew we could pack this place with. I'm not against adult education. We have one of the best state wide models for adult education in this city. But by law, we're not required. That is a school committee program if we want to keep it. It is not required by law. The city can't mandate it. It is our wish if we want to fund that program. We could rezone the city and save $700,000 to $800,000. But the wish of the committee was we didn't want to affect 45% of the kids in a 9-month period and tell them they had to change. It was called draconian. I call cutting $3 million in programming draconian. I knew if I said athletics, I'd get people talking about it. I was butchered all over social media. I expected that. That's okay. I can take it. Because my point is, we need to concentrate on providing direct support for our students. Here's the saddest part of all. If we cut everything that I suggested, that's only about $2.2 million. That doesn't even give us the $3 million in cuts that we need. Now, one of the good things that I've just heard in the last 24 hours from people I know on the board of the charter school, the collegiate charter school has again this year, second year in a row, they have postponed changing their starting and ending time. They came to us last year and said they wanted to change it. Mr. Frisch and I met with them at the request of the superintendent, and they delayed it for a year. And now I believe the superintendent and her staff have met with them, and they've again agreed, according to the members I talked to, agreed to delay it for a year. And this is the same charter school, by the way, that for 2 years in a row provided us $400,000 for transportation costs when they didn't have to. But they have tried to be a good partner to this city. As much as people bash charter school, there are public school students. And so that school has been a great partner for us in trying to help us save. So this motion is a wake-up call, I hope, to parents. I hope to people who are involved with the schools. Get a hold of your city councilors, get a hold of your city manager, and tell them what we're looking for is a fairer distribution of their required net school spending, and that means sitting down with us and hammering out a new maintenance of effort agreement and putting in some protections so that we get more cash to operate with. Now, the good news too this afternoon is the House Ways and Means released their version of a proposed budget. There are increases built in. There's also some other money that we may be able to apply for. DESE is not put up what that means yet, but they will probably by tomorrow. But it looks like it could be another decent increase for us. And that's a good thing. But at the same time, when they raise Chapter 70, the city's responsibility also goes up. And what keeps happening to us is we don't get that as a form of the cash contribution. Our maintenance of effort charges go up. So we need people to please, we're not asking for more funding. We're asking for a fairer distribution. Thank you.
Any other comments? Ms. Martin.
Can I just ask through to the superintendent, perhaps to the assistant superintendent? We've talked a great deal about these ongoing negotiations. Can you give us a sense of where that is? The conversations around the maintenance of effort agreement?
We did have a meeting with the city manager, Mr. Nutter, the superintendent, and the city CFO, and we just discussed a different methodology to further explain what Mr. Nutter is saying. The city is required to give us a certain amount, and when that amount goes up, they can address it in two ways. They can give us the cash and assistance toward our education budget, or they can charge it off. And what happened last year is we got an increase in the Chapter 70 money, which automatically increases your net school spending, your required spending. When they increased that, the city decreased the cash they give us toward education and increased, I'll give examples, toward snow removal, or they charge things like the treasurer's office, the auditing office. They charge the city expenses. So when we spoke to them, we talked about having a methodology that would allow them to continue with their formulas. And, we didn't have a problem with the formulas or the consistent amounts, but we wanted to see that when we do get an increase, instead of just charging more snow or more in-kind expenses to us, if we could guarantee a certain percentage that would come to us in cash, because let's face it, Chapter 70 increases because the government recognizes that there's inflation and that there's increased cost due to the population changes. So when we get an increase to Chapter 70, we need it. If we had the flexibility, we'd spend less on the snow removal and more on the special ed teachers.
So we did get some confirmation back from the city manager, but we have yet to have that second meeting, so that needs to happen.
Do we have a sense of when that will happen?
If we can get something, it won't happen this week, but hopefully we can get something next week when school is out,
Okay.
people are around.
My question would be regarding the maintenance of effort agreement. I mean, obviously, that's something that needs to be wrapped up sooner rather than later, particularly as we're heading into budget season, because that makes a huge difference in what we have to work with. The decision between an articulated MOU versus the state standard for maintenance of effort, do we have a sense of what the differential is between that and those in terms of dollars? If we chose not to go with the MOU and we chose instead to go with the standard formula?
Mr. Nutter, you have an answer for that?
I do. The formula for the state is only for the administrative cost, which would be MIS, auditing, treasurer, and possibly purchasing. And the difference in our agreement and that agreement is favorable to us by probably, I would say, somewhere around $30,000 to $50,000. More favorable to us than using that. Other than that, everything else is wide open to discussion and approval by the school committee and the particular cities and towns. What I found fascinating in talking to Desi is they do not keep copies. Because one of the questions I had was, could you provide me with a copy of Springfield's or a copy of Worcester's? And they don't keep one on file.
So would we be able to anticipate then that at our next meeting, we'd be able to have a fairly comprehensive update on the status of negotiations, perhaps even a resolution? Okay, thank you very much.
We would love that.
Yeah, I know we're all in favor of it, so thank you.
Anyone else? Mr. Lay, did you want to have your hand up?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just have a question for Mr. Nutter and probably also to Superintendent. I wonder, what is the purpose of this report that we want to do? Are you trying to see if we were to eliminate, do we want to eliminate these programs when the report came out? And how much effort are you going to put into this to find all this just for this superintendent?
Mr. Nutter?
Since he did ask me first.
Okay.
As I explained, Mr. Lay, I don't throw out questions that I don't know the answer to. I pointed out already that even if we were to cut these programs, it would only equal $2.2 million, roughly. And as the assistant superintendent mentioned earlier, even if we got the full 9.9 that the governor has suggested, we would still be $3 million short. So I don't expect them to put in any time or answer this report. I had said that earlier. My point is to inform the public that without more funding or an equal distribution of the required funding, we are facing still $3 million in cuts that will be a lot worse than what I've suggested tonight.
Does that answer your question, Mr. Lay? I mean,
Sure.
the motion is a report, so I don't know if anyone else has other comments? I think Mr.
Yeah,
Bowie?
yes, thank you, Madam Chair. I could throw other things in this, and I'm not saying that Mr. Nutt is trying to scare people. I think it makes sense, and all we're asking for is a report showing the savings. We're not gonna vote, I know I would never vote on eliminating any of these things right here. There's other ways to look. The city has a lot of people over there that were on the school committee, and the city manager, she was a two-time mayor, so she sat on the school committee quite a bit. I think they know over the years that the schools have gotten, what I like to say, very inclusive, and the money didn't come with it. It's happening in your state prisons, it happens in the mental hospitals, and it's now happening in your schools. What I feel the city's trying to do is they're trying to bring us closer to them, so we're like a department, like the DPW, any support staff, let's say custodians. We're forcing the city manager to look into maybe outsourcing or privatizing custodians, maybe the DPW. So the city has their own issues to deal with, but I think they should open their eyes. They all were sitting in these seats at one time. Yes, there's things we probably still can cut, but all these things that we're talking about, it's like the night that my colleague, Mr. Nutter, said, we got to cut tutors. We got to cut tutors. And I remember coming back with something very stupid saying, well, why don't we cut math coaches? And I didn't want to do that tonight, but before I would look at any one of these things, I think the city should look at their own budget, and they should realize that the schools, need more money. It's at a critical point, obviously, and I think they got to take a good look in the mirror, and they got to find ways to help us out right now and help out the students of Lowell. I'm not going to say much more than that, but I don't think the city is really putting up what they should be. The state might be giving us a pretty good chunk of dough. I heard that down at the State House today, but I think the city needs to do more, and they're not doing it. The city council is not doing it. So that's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Martin. You had another comment?
Thank you very much. I'd just like to say, I know that it's, this is a bit of a Pyrrhic effort, but I would say there is a lot of information requests that go into this administration, asking for reports, asking for information, recognizing that this is not necessarily, a report is not necessarily going to help us in this situation. Going through the motions of just pulling these numbers together, I don't think we would find instructive. I would say that to the maker of the motion, if he would be willing to just, not actually look for an actual report, perhaps just ask for the, maybe a verbal kind of total that would be helpful. I appreciate the perspective of the motion, and my other colleagues as well, that we could be in a very serious situation, as we generally are when it comes to our budget season and our budget process. Personally, I would prefer us take it seriously. We're in a process that is, the negotiations that are going on now, the conversations that are going on now around our maintenance of effort agreement. I think that's where the real work and the positive work can happen. And I would really rather see our administration focus on that. And if as we get deeper into the budget process, there will, I'm sure, be times for banging the drum, but I just feel like we're at a point right now where the conversations are going on, and we need to be focused on that in a thoughtful and serious way. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Nutter, one more quick comment, because this will be your third time on this motion.
I don't need a report. I've already stated how much it would cost us. My point, I'm not rescinding the motion, because my point is, we have a big shortfall, and we're not, if I hear one more counselor tell the school department to live within their means when they're not giving us the means to live within, it's frustrating. So the point of this motion was to get everybody's attention, that it's great to go down to Boston and tell them to fix the foundation budget. We all agree that needs fixing. But let's start in your hometown where your city is giving us less cash contribution than they did before ed reform. Transportation is a huge part of what we have to pay with the cash that we're giving. 13% after we pay for transportation is all we get for an operating budget for our schools. And that was the point tonight, to highlight that to the general public who isn't aware of this. And we need to start doing it before the budget season, before the council votes, because I have the feeling that we're going to find out that, you know, that 650 I'm predicting is a pretty dead-on number unless we end up with more money from, you know, somehow the city finds it. I don't expect it.
So you're not rescinding the motion, we'll have a roll call on it? No?
If I could, I'm not going to vote against a fellow member's request for information. Anytime a member wants information, I'm going to support that.
Okay.
So what you're asking, asking to provide a report, then, I mean, again, I understand the exercise that you're going through and what you're trying to accomplish with this. It just, I'm not going to vote no when anyone wants information. It's fine.
Ms. Turner, did you want to say something?
Being that I'm going through the budget anyway, it would be simple enough for me to just take these totals and quickly give a tally, so it's something that I can do easily. Well, I don't know if it will come to 2.2.
Pretty sure it will.
It's going to be close. Going to be close.
Okay.
I'll copy his number, yeah.
Thank you.
I mean, honestly.
All right, all those in favor?
Could I just say one more thing?
Okay, Mr.
Okay.
Hoey?
It's my second time speaking.
know.
I think Mr. Nutter's right on the money. We've been banging the maintenance of effort for quite a while here, even before Mr. Nutter came here. And now that he's here, I think he's doing a bang-up job putting pressure on the city council. They constantly talk bad about us and how we spend our money, and they're not looking in the mirror. And that's my opinion. So I know these things won't be cut. I think the way he brought it up is a good way, because they're not listening, and maybe people will put some pressure on some of those ex-school committee people and ex-mayors that sat here and did just the same job that we're trying to do. And so I'm with Mr. Nutter 100% on everything about maintenance of effort. I'm glad he's aboard. You fought it very hard yourself, Ms. Doherty. They didn't give us money when we should have got some of that dough, and it's hurt us. So I want to praise him for what he's doing, because we got to put enough pressure on the city to come up with some dough, because they should be. Thank you.
All those in favor of the motion for a report, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Mr. Lay is opposed? No? Okay. All those in favor? Motion passes. Okay, next motion by Mr. Nutter. School committee vote to direct our lawyer to draft a letter to the magistrate in the Hewitt versus City of Lowell case opposing any settlement involving changing the way school committee is elected or appointed due to lack of school committee being allowed representation in the case. Do I have a second? Mr. Dakota. Mr. Nutter?
Again, I'm not saying that we have to mail this letter in, but none of us know what's going on. We've all heard through the grapevine a lot of different things, including, proposals to make it an appointed school committee, eliminate the school committee, whatever. All I'm saying is, as a school committee member, the school committee is named in the lawsuit, as is 4 of the individuals who are here tonight. They're also named individually, the past school committee. And so for our own protection, we should be ready to say, we're not going to agree with you changing anything until we get a seat at the table and are allowed to talk about it and hear from it.
Should we have a roll call on this? All those in favor of this, Ms. Martin?
Would we be able to, and I don't know if this has happened or not yet, request an update for an executive session for the school committee? To ask the city's attorney?
I believe we already had a motion asking that the school committee be updated in executive session. That motion passed. I don't know the date on that.
I don't know when
but
that
that happened a while ago. Mr. Nutter, you might have the date at the top of your head?
My understanding is until an agreement is reached we will not be brought in. So we're not going to know anything until they reach an agreement. And then before, supposedly, allegedly, before it's announced, we will be brought in and updated at that point.
Ms. Martin?
The superintendent.
Oh, Madam
So I
Superintendent.
just want to clarify, do you want me to approach the city for an executive session? City lawyer?
I mean, I think that
believe
that's more effective.
The prior motion directed the mayor to speak to the city on this issue.
Okay, so if we could ask the administration to reach out to, unfortunately he's not here tonight, but to reach out to Mayor Samaras it's already a passed motion, so we don't have to do anything else about it. And, you know, if we're directing a lawyer to draft a letter, that's fine.
Okay.
You know, but
Any other comments on
I
this?
would say though, does our lawyer, general counsel wouldn't necessarily cover us in discrimination cases, correct? Those are always handled by the city. We don't have any culpability or any standing. Okay, so we're basically asking the city solicitor to draft a letter to herself?
No, we're asking our lawyer.
Our lawyer doesn't cover us in those matters.
Our lawyer covers us in representing the school committee's wishes. And so we're just asking him to draft a letter to tell, if it comes to that, and hopefully that letter would never have to be sent. I mean, I don't want to go and hire an outside legal counsel like the last school committee did to just, you know, you guys didn't, it wasn't under general counsel, so you went and hired a lawyer to fight for the high school placement. We don't have to do that here. All I'm asking is that we use our own lawyer to just draft a letter protecting our interest and our rights. That's all I'm looking for.
Mr. Hoey?
I just want to support what Mr. Nutter's doing here also. My name's on that suit, and I feel that I don't know anything about what's going on, and the way it looks to me, they might cave. So I'm going to agree with Mr. Nutter on this motion also.
Okay. Do we need, Ms. Martin? Do we want to do a roll call on this request? No? Okay, all those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Okay, next motion by Mr. Nutter. School committee vote to request DESE conduct a fiscal compliance audit regarding the city's net school spending charges. Seconded by Mr. Hoey. Mr. Nutter.
When we received the information regarding the district-wide compliance audit, I happened to go online to look at some of the other compliance audits that had been done throughout the state. And in doing so, I happened to look at Pittsfield, Massachusetts. And when I was reading their report that was published online, I saw that they had a compliance audit done and had discovered that the city had actually overcharged them by $92,000. So again, at a time where, you know, we saw this year that our police charges went up by $552,000 over what they were the year before, because what was supplied to us said they included crossing guards. Now, our maintenance of effort agreement back from 2004 clearly states crossing guards will be reported but not counted. When we inquired about that, we were told, well, that we didn't really charge for that, you know, that was caught somewhere and it was fixed. But on the information that we received from the city, their breakdown had over $1 million in charges. So how can you give us information and say, well, the information we gave is wrong? So, you know, we had a food service audit done by DESE, and it was discovered that we had overcharged that by $2 million. So all I'm saying is, let's just make sure that, you know, trust but verify.
Any other comments?
We could do that, but I just wanted to let you know, we just paid $35,000 as our portion of the financial audit done by Powers and Sullivan, and they do catch things because the city, there was a mistake and we had a double charge of $480,000 twice on our interest, and they catch it, and then we are allowed to correct it. So I think that audit does the same thing that the compliance audit would do, and we paid for that one, so.
I'm not sure Powers and Sullivan gets into the maintenance of effort
Oh, okay.
I don't think they got into the maintenance of effort at all.
at all. That's why I think we asked Desi to specifically look at the maintenance of effort charges.
But I think that brings up a good point. Is there a charge to have Desi do a
Not that
compliance audit?
I believe there is no charge.
Okay. All right, all those in favor of this motion?
Aye.
Agreed? Any opposed? Motion passes. Okay, next motion by Mr. Nutter. School committee vote per
Excuse me, Ms. Doherty. On this one, because of the comments tonight by the superintendent that we're going to try to work out some type of arrangement, I'm going to withdraw this at this time, and hopefully I won't have to bring it back.
Okay, thank you. So that motion is withdrawn. Next motion by Mr. Lay, ask the superintendent to create a line item for translations in the FY20 budget for the amount of $30,000. Seconded by Mr. Hoey. Mr. Lay.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This motion came from several complaints I heard from our staff. The translations is easily mistaken by saying, hey, why don't you go learn English, by somebody out there. So, but, you know, translation is a required, and from what I think, it is a federal requirement that we should have. And so far, we do have, I think superintendent and office probably could explain better, but I think we do have translation, but it's all pulled out from different departments, and we never have a specific item specifically for translation, and we always fall behind. So maybe it's might just to have the superintendent explain what the importance of the translation and what you think of it.
Madam Superintendent?
Certainly. So there are new regulations coming forward relative to translation that will potentially impact the next school year. So it is something that we have been looking at for a number of years now. Our IEPs, all of our literature that's going out to our families, we do need to provide translated services. We are currently doing our best with our major items, our handbooks, our registration information, any curriculum information that's got to go out relative to specific assessments and everything to families. But it is a constant challenge for us.
Mr. Dakota.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Are there audio versions to translations?
We do have a small amount of money that was set aside for our schools to use translations in their team meetings. If they have a special IEP meeting, we can call in, and there are a number of hundreds of languages that are translatable. The challenge with that is its cost per minute. So it's quite expensive. But right now, our schools do have a small stipend each to access that service.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Martin.
Thank you very much. You know, I think that this is our ability to be able to communicate with our families and whatnot is critical to parent engagement. It's incredibly important, and it's the law. I mean, you know, we absolutely need to be able to do that. I know that we're currently doing it using funds, you know, from across a lot of different areas. I'm sure there's even grant funds that are attached to this. My question would be, does it make sense to pull out a specific line item, create a new line item when we don't even know what we're currently spending across all the different areas. For $30,000, I don't know what that buys us. I don't know how much translation. I don't know, is it written? Is it verbal? Is it the phone calls when you're in a specific parent meeting? I mean, I think asking for more information about how we're funding our translation services, and again, as the administration is looking at this, what we see as the increased needs as we move forward. I would certainly be interested to see that, again, as part of our comprehensive budget conversations. I'm just not comfortable pulling this out now when it's not being presented in the context of the overall budget, when again, we're, a month or so away from, from getting our initial budget document. So I don't need a roll call vote on it, but.
All those in favor of the motion? Aye. Oh, did you want to speak, Mr.
Well, just a question. Would Mr. Lay mind it if we just worded it a little differently so that, ask the superintendent to bring forward information regarding improving the translation currently in effect and a projection of what that might entail, including cost?
Are you amenable to a friendly?
I'm willing to modify a little bit, but I do want to keep the line item with that. I do want to I'm agree with Ms. Martin in regarding to, do a little bit more investigation in to regard to the real cost. But I do want to keep the line item open. Would that be something?
I kind of agree with Ms. Martin. I don't think we need to add it as a separate line item because it covers so many different parts of our budget. It goes pretty much through the system because we have to have so many of the different documents in so many different languages instead of putting it in one.
What about a suggestion our secretaries come up with? To ask the superintendent to create a line item for translation in the FY20 budget in an amount to be determined. Because we're looking at what are we getting from these other sources, right? And is it enough? And if it's not enough, what we would need to supplement? And that would kind of do both things? I don't know. Mr. Nutter?
Can we ask the superintendent what her opinion is?
Okay. Madam Superintendent?
I think what we need to do is bring forward to you what we have. So some of the funding that we did have in this past year, the grants aren't going to be available to us. They end at the end of this fiscal year. So I think it would be important for us to share with you specifically what we have utilized this year and what else we need.
So with that, but can be, I accept the new motion that modified by the machine. So I'm okay with that.
Okay. All those in favor of the motion? Opposed? Aye. Motion passes. Okay, the next motion by Mr. Lay. Ask that the superintendent explore the feasibility of reinstating full-time parent liaisons. Seconded by Mr. Hoey. Mr. Lay.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This motion is somewhat similar to the translation part. Overall, it's all about helping our school systems better. This motion came about from parents and teachers that I've been talking to, and they realized that parent liaisons are the positions that have been, a lot of them has been eliminated, and that put a lot of pressure to the teachers, and it helps. It put a lot of pressure on the attendance and absentees. So by having a body that's specifically serving mostly on that purpose, and they do a lot, and they don't cost that much. They do a lot, and I think it's a position that's hands-on. They work directly with the students, establishing a relationship with the students. They have direct contact with the students. So I think it will help overall our system by tremendously. So I encourage my colleagues to at least help the superintendent to look for a way to maybe reinstate a few positions in regard to parent liaisons. Thank you.
Mr. Hoey.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Dominic, I love the motion. I think it's a good motion, but at this time, the way we are with money, I think we should just maybe add this to the priority list that we have of things that we're going to reinstate if we do come up with money, because we have a lot of important things. And I'm not saying this isn't important, but there's a lot of issues that we have to look at in that list of, we had a list, that priority list. I don't know if we ever ranked it yet, but there's a lot of different things that if we get some money that we have to replace, and this should be one of them too. That's just my opinion. They should be on the priority list also. Thank you.
Mr. Lay?
Sure. Thank you, Madam Chair. Do we have a priority list? I mean, if we have one, we do, from the last year?
Yes, we do.
Okay. Well, thank you.
So
I do that. I will.
So we're just going to add it to
just
the
add it.
priority list, and we will delve into it more deeply when we're fully in
Sure.
the budget.
There's no, excuse me, Madam Chair, there's no doubt, Dominic, to me, this is a very important job. The ones that we do have working, doing it now at the McAvenue and a few other schools, I know how important they are, but adding it to the list, I think, is fair to a lot of other positions that we can't fill right now, so that's all. Thank you.
And I just want to add, I'm sorry, Madam Chair.
Mr. Lay?
Thank you. Just quickly want to add, they don't cost that much. I mean, we pay them a lot cheaper than teachers. Thank you.
Okay, so now we're on to the subcommittees, and we have a report and approval of the meeting of the Policy Subcommittee on April 3rd. Mr. Nutter is the chair.
Thank you. The subcommittee met. We discussed two items that evening. One was a policy on service animals. Mr. Hall had brought that forward for review. It looked at all different animals, including a miniature pony that Ms. Martin was all in favor of bringing into the schools. But we did come up with a policy, and the recommendation from the subcommittee was to bring that policy forward for approval of the entire school committee. So at this time, I would make the motion that the school committee approve the policy on service animals as recommended by Attorney Hall.
Okay, motion is made by Mr. Nutter, seconded by Mr. Hoey. Roll call.
Mr. Dakota?
Yes.
Ms. Doherty?
Yes.
Mr. Hoey?
Yes.
Mr. Lay?
Yes.
Ms. Martin?
Yes.
Mr. Nutter?
Yes.
Mayor Samaras? 6 yeas, 1 absent, approved.
Also on the agenda that night was a item that came from a motion by Mr. Lay and Mr. Hoey to expand the amount of time available for public speaking, public participation. Ours was presently at 3 minutes. The city council's is at 5 minutes. The subcommittee voted to approve going to 5 minutes, expanding it to 5 minutes, same as the city council. And so I bring that forward in the form of a motion to allow public participation be expanded to 5 minutes.
Motion by Mr. Nutter, seconded by Ms. Martin. Roll call.
Mr. Dakota?
Yes.
Ms. Doherty?
Yes.
Mr. Hoey?
Yes.
Mr. Lay?
Yes.
Ms. Martin?
Yes.
Mr. Nutter?
Yes.
Mayor Samaras? 6 yeas, 1 absent, approved.
And that is the report from the policy subcommittee meeting.
Motion by Mr. Nutter to accept the report as a report of progress, seconded by Ms. Martin. All in favor, accepted. Okay, we have a number of reports from the superintendent. We'll start with the Communications and Literacy MTEL workshop.
Yes, thank you. This is a follow-up to Mr. Lay's motion for MTEL workshops, and Ms. Maggio is here to share the flyer and how we'll get the word out.
You have before you, good evening, you have before you, this is a updated version. The copy that was sent to you included only 2 informational sessions, which was really not adequate. So what you're looking at here is a flyer that is going to be distributed, and I'll talk about that in a minute. And actually, what we're doing is we're asking people, the citizens who live in Lowell, those who would like to be a teacher, aspire to be a teacher, young and old, we're not going to discriminate, to come to this informational session. What do we have to offer? Well, we have to offer information as far as what do you need to do to become a teacher. Secondly, how can Lowell, the Lowell Teacher Academy specifically, help you achieve that goal? And we're really willing and able to help you on that. And so we scheduled there are 5 informational sessions. We tried to locate them throughout the city for the convenience of people so they would be able to, to go to them without having to travel, if you will. So the other question that came to mind is, okay, well, we have a flyer. How do we distribute it? Because it's very important that it get in the right hands. And some of the things that we were talking about were sending this flyer home with the students in each of the schools. And we also discussed the possibility of doing a robocall the evening before it gets out, because as we know, papers go home and they're not always read. So this way we can announce to parents that there is something very special that's going to be coming home with the children. And if you or you know anyone who is interested in teaching in the wonderful city of Lowell, please come to our informational session. So we plan on doing that. We also plan on distributing this throughout the businesses, walking up and down the streets of Merrimack Street, going to the supermarkets and putting it on the bulletin board. We're also asking members of the school committee to go out and broadcast this, please, to your constituents, because we really want people to come and investigate this wonderful opportunity. We're looking for diversity, and it's right in our own backyard. So then when we talk about the informational session, what are we going to actually do? And I was thinking about that earlier, and I'm thinking, we want it to be more than informational. We want it to be inspirational. We want to inspire people to come join us, our faculty. So I'm thinking about we would ask some teachers to attend, perhaps some administrators to attend, and perhaps to have some school committee members attend as well. So that's the plan. Are there any questions?
I assume it'll also be on our website, right?
Yes.
Great. Any other questions? Mr. Lay?
Thanks, Ms. Chair. Ms. Maggio, I want to thank you and Ms. Superintendent and the whole team who has been working on this. I think it came out very, very good, and I appreciate it. Looks really good. When I saw this report at home, I was so happy. So I hope that the resident of Lowell will take the benefit of it, will take advantage of this. So thank you very much.
I can assure you that we're not going to leave any stone unturned to get people to come to these sessions.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Mr. Dakota.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think this is a fabulous idea. In my teaching career, whenever, and I'm sure you'll agree with me on this one, is that some of the best, truly best and inspirational teachers that we've had aren't the ones who just went into teaching right from the day one. It's people that were in private business and in other areas that decided they really would like to teach. And they come with such a fervor in their fields, and then getting into teaching and working with kids. I think it's fabulous. I think it's great. Hopefully, you'll have a great turnout at every single one of your workshops. And I say, again, kudos to that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Nutter?
You asked us to broadcast it.
Yes.
See me after the meeting so we can arrange to have you come on WCAP and do just that.
I'm going to accept. I do have to go home. I'm not feeling well, and I think I'm
Okay.
running a fever.
I'll
So I
send
want to
you.
go home and
I'll
rest.
send you an email.
Okay,
Thank
thank you. But count me in, I'll be there.
Great. Thank you. So the next report is a response to Ms. Martin's motion of March 6th regarding preschool and kindergarten admission policies. Madam Superintendent.
Thank you. I'd ask, with your permission, to have Lisa Van Thiel, the Early Childhood Coordinator, come up and briefly explain our recommendation.
Thank you for the opportunity to provide the report to you. So I did try to frame it for you as there's not really an assessment that's appropriate to determine eligibility to enter preschool. The purpose of assessment in early childhood is really to look at improving the teaching practices or to identify a disability or a special need, so it's more of a deficit model, or to inform program evaluation. So you're opening up quite a can of worms from an assessment standpoint. Which assessment to choose, how valid or reliable it is. In addition to that, if you look at other communities, I put them in the report and hopefully you saw those. We're in line with them. Most of them are August 28th. They're mostly 4 years old for preschool and 5 years old for kindergarten. So I think we're right in line within a few days, and no matter when you have the cutoff, there will be people that are on either side of that cutoff. And then I just tried to provide you with some brief slides from the Early Childhood Longitudinal Study, which is the largest group of kids that I could get a sample on regarding their entry. So only 1% of all of the 6,000 something kids that participated in that national study were entered early. And they didn't necessarily fare as well as their peers that entered with their same grade level group. Also, I think you have a variety of equity issues that would arise if you decided to do that. We have a lot of English language learners in our community. They're not going to test well. We don't really have enough resources right now to test all of the students that we need to just to meet our IDA requirements for screening. We have a lot of grants that have been funding that kind of work. We also have the pre-LAS now, which is an assessment for English language learners at preschool that has been required by the state. So I think we have to look at what are the costs that we have to do and cover those before adding additional. And then, you know, we're not serving all of the students that enter the lottery for preschool as it is. So if we allow one who's applied, and you know, what does that say? Obviously for kindergarten, we're accepting everybody that is applying. But I do think we have some issues of equity, socioeconomic, language, and just past experience. So I'm going to take any questions that anyone has.
Thank you. Ms. Martin?
I would only say thank you for the report. I think for anyone who had seen when I made the actual motion, it's the exact information that we get periodically. Every 4 or 5 years, we have to ask this question so we can get the updated information. And, you know, and I appreciate it. I think it's important, certainly for this committee. I think it's more importantly important for the community to understand that, you know, there's certainly an arbitrariness of we pick a date and that's the date. And I think that's really the, you know, we are in line with our surrounding communities. It's, you know, it keeps us kind of, again, fair across the board. And I do think that the issues of kind of the groups who have some additional challenges, again, aren't treated fairly if there was any kind of a any kind of a differential put in place for people to feel they would take advantage of. I think one of the key pieces of information that we should also talk about in this vein, in addition to the fact that there's not any research showing that it helps in terms of getting people in, getting students in, earlier, a year earlier, based on, where the birthday kind of tends to fall. There is a great deal of research that shows that students who start deeper in their developmental time frame, for a student that isn't able to start in September, who does have to wait until the next September, will always do better than their peers. When you look at any kind of longitudinal study, you are looking at, and it's certainly not specific to Lowell or anything else, they will always tell you that students who are born in January have the best outcomes because they tend to start later just by dint of when the month is. So, and these are studies that are, have gone on for many, many years, able to, nationally normed and able to be replicated over and over again. It's just a simple function of the developmental process for young people and the students that we're dealing with. So again, I appreciate it because I think getting updated information, updated research is always helpful. We should always be open to changes and investigating some of these things. So I appreciate the work that went into the report, and I hope for our families and our parents. I understand the frustration, I absolutely do, but there is actually a thought process behind it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next is the business office update. Ms. Turner?
The business office update includes miscellaneous updates on the unified efforts with the city, embezzlement, playground, and funding formula. I met with the city auditor, and we identified ways that we can put internal controls in place to avoid the problems that we've identified over the last several months. One of the main things that we came up with was, he had the idea, and we just extended it to the other areas. When I explained during the forensic part of our review of the budget how expenditure transfers, you wouldn't see it. You don't approve those. Those are done behind the scenes. So when we spend money in an account, if we do an expenditure transfer, you wouldn't even understand that or know it because it's up to us to tell you that. So if we put a control in place now for the milk and lunch and other revolving account transfers where we bring it to you for approval, then now you will see the data and you'll know what's happening behind the scenes. So in your packet, there is a $567,000 transfer. And again, to make sure that I'm being as transparent as possible, I included the indirect cost rate that's on the second page and a packet that shows you how these costs are determined so that you understand what you're approving. That packet is $567,000 of approved custodial cost. It's the indirect cost rate. So that's one thing. Any questions on that?
Mr. Nutter?
Thank you. This is exactly what the school committee needs because it's not only the transfer request, but as you say, you're showing us what's allowed and you're showing us how the state gives us this formula and how they come to it. So as a new member, it's very eye-opening to see this and it's very beneficial to see this, and it's great that you and the auditor together are doing this.
Mm-hmm. We are going to do it with the other revolving funds as well, but the second update is on the embezzlement. We were approved for a full bond penalty reimbursement of $25,000. That was the bond amount. There was discussion with the city CFO about the funds going into the general fund, and I was a bit shocked by that because I thought insurance was to make us whole. So if we have to put the $25,000 into the general fund, I was concerned that what if we don't get it? Well, when I said I thought that it's to replenish the accounts that were stolen from, the city CFO explained that based on conversations with state officials, being that we paid for the insurance with the general fund dollars, that it would go into the general fund. So my statement to that was, why would we, the school, get charged for insurance if we were not going to be made whole? And furthermore, my main concern was that these are little children that raised this money. I mean, they sold chocolate bars so they can go on a field trip. So if we don't give them the 25,000 back, we don't have the money to give it to them. So when I explained that, he did say that he's not necessarily against, so I'm not sure, I don't have concrete, I don't have a definite answer yet, but he said he's not against it flowing into the student activities. So I just wanted to give you a heads up on that in case it doesn't happen, in case we have angry parents. But any questions on that?
Mr. Hoey?
I'd just like to know, the person that stole that money, I'm wondering if she has to pay restitution.
She was indicted, and this is the insurance payment, and any additional payment would have to be ordered. I'm just saying what was in the paper, but, okay.
Okay.
Mr. Nutter?
Through you to the assistant superintendent, not that I think it would carry a great deal of weight, but should the school committee put in a request asking the mayor to please advocate to the city manager that this money be restored to the student activity accounts?
I can't see that it would hurt, so that would be a motion by Mr. Nutter, seconded by Mr. Dakota. Ms. Martin?
I know that this is kind of an arcane situation, which with any luck we never deal with again. But to your point about being made whole, I mean, if one of our cars got in an accident, if if someone who's traveling on our behalf, one of the, I'm not thinking like the buses, but like one of our maintenance vehicles got in an accident, we pay for our insurance through the general fund. With the money to fix that repair go into the general fund, and the vehicle would just sit unless it was decided that that insurance money would go to actually what it was insuring?
That's exactly my point.
Yeah.
I'm sure that maybe from a technical point of view, it may have to flow through the general fund, but I'm sure that it's intended to come back to us because we
Right.
paid for the insurance to help us when we encounter situations
that's
like
crazy.
that. And again, he did say he's not necessarily against it, but
I appreciate it. No, and I mean, certainly, and I think, to your point, this is a particular argument where it is, little kids sold candy bars and wrapping paper and all that other stuff. It needs to go back into that, but it just seems like with student activities are a discrete fund, that it would just it would just go right back into that account. But I appreciate your efforts to advocate for that, and my colleagues as well.
So we do have a motion on the floor that's been seconded. I'm going to ask for a roll call.
Mr. Dakota?
Yes.
Ms. Doherty?
Yes.
Mr. Hoey?
Yes.
Ms. Martin?
Yes.
Mr. Nutter?
Yes.
Mr. Legg?
Yes.
Mayor Samaras? 6 yeas, 1 absent, approved.
Thank you. The next report, oh, I'm sorry, did you have more reports, Mr. Chairman?
we have an update on the playground. As directed, we did share this with the city. We submitted a follow-up memo that identified the 3 priority areas that were safety hazards, and those included, like, the S hooks and things that could hurt the children, like no latches on the gate. So that was simple enough, and the potholes were filled with the director of facilities reaching out to the city. And the other area was the drug the drug needles and all, and we worked with the city manager to identify ways to help with that, which is to have a needle pickup whenever there are needles identified, so that was addressed. The next item in the packet is the Aramark update, and it's a weekly update that tells you all of the activities that are going on with food service this past week. And the last item on that update is the funding formula. There's a save the date flyer on the last page of your packet that just explains, we mimicked what they did in other districts, how they explained it to their, their local people. It's April 22nd at 6:30, and we're trying to get as many people as we can to come and work. I'm here, Brockton, and hear how the funding formula is underfunded and it's causing us to cut in the important areas. So that's also included.
Thank you. Mr. Hoey.
Yes, I just would like to make a comment through you to Ms. Turner, Superintendent. The needles. The last time we found a needle around our school, it was around the Cardinal O'Connor School, and it was in the leaves that get blown up against the fences. It's our responsibility, the schools and the custodians, to make sure that they clean and cut grass around their property. I know we just visited 29 schools altogether, Dominic and myself on behalf of the whole school committee, but I'd like to send a message over to Mr. Underwood to get the message out to make sure all the leaves, because I did see, and of course, it's springtime just starting. I mean, I'm not saying that they haven't done their job, but this year, I want to make sure our landscaping is as good as we can get it. It's important for the custodians all across the city. Clean your fences around the playgrounds, make sure there's no leaves there, and we just have to get them going. So if you could get this message to Mr. Underwood, I think the needles are a problem, no doubt, but if you clear all the leaves and the debris up against the fences, it's a lot easier to observe the needles, because the last one they found was buried in a bunch of leaves. So, thank you.
Thank you. The next, I'm sorry, Mr. Dakota.
Mr. Hoey neglected to mention that I was part of that visiting troop. He just mentioned Mr. Late. That's okay. It's okay.
Okay,
Ms.
the next report is
Ms. Doherty?
Mr. Nutter.
I'm sorry, I just wanted to mention, as far as the needles, parents and staff need to know that we were in a discussion when we were talking about the maintenance of effort. We mentioned this problem, and the city could not stress enough that if you see needles on the playground or near the school, to please contact the police department or the city manager's office or the superintendent's office. Do not attempt to pick up and remove those. We can't be exposing our staff to anything, and we don't want our parents or especially our students touching them. So it is very important that if you see it, to notify someone and do not attempt to clean it.
Thank you. Madam Superintendent.
Yes, thank you. The city has hired someone, and they're going to be developing some training programs. We also had our very own Career Academy students do a really wonderful PSA, so they're going to get that out to our schools as well.
Thank you. Okay, the next report is the Behavioral and Mental Health Services Grant update.
It's just to provide you an update that we did receive $110,000. It's a very short window of time. It's till the end of the school year, but it will provide us with the opportunity to look at our much-needed mental health services and try to pull together a team of community agencies to work to support our students.
Thank you. The next report is a response to Mr. Nutter's motions of February 14th and February 19th regarding the new maintenance of effort agreement. Madam Superintendent.
I'll turn it over to Assistant Superintendent Turner.
This is a long one, so I'm going to try to find a nice way of simplifying it. Though the two motions that are addressed in this response are requests to the city, I thought if I give you a quick update so that you understand exactly what we're asking for. The foundation budget is calculated by the state. We don't dictate that. The state takes the number of students and estimated cost criteria to find a minimum spend-in per district. When they identify this minimum spend-in per district, they then look at the community's ability to pay. They dictate how much the required minimum contribution is by the city. Then they take that foundation budget less the required minimum, and that leftover amount is funded by Chapter 70. When the city is funding their required minimum contribution, they can meet this by making a contribution toward our education budget, which is the $15.7 million in cash that Mr. Nutter has mentioned. The other way of meeting that required minimum contribution is through the maintenance of effort charge-offs. So if their required minimum is $47 million and they use 15.7 in cash, that means approximately $30 million is being charged to charge-off areas like 44% of the treasurer's office, auditor's office, purchasing department, Medicare, pensions, building maintenance, school resource, and I put the whole list in your package so that you can understand where the majority of our required minimum contribution is spent. Any questions on that? Okay, so with that, the state also implemented accountability measures, which are net school spending. Your minimum required spending equals your net school spending. The way they track that is through a report that we complete at the end of the year, the end of the year report. The city provides their numbers and I provide our numbers. We did meet net school spending, and that is because the city had $30 million in charge-offs plus the charter school reimbursement, the charter school cost of $21 million and their cash. But when we were discussing the new motion earlier today about the budget, from the year 16-17 to 17-18, Chapter 70 went up $11 million, but the city then reduced us by $4.1 million. When the state is increasing us, they're increasing us because they know there's raises. We have to retain our teachers, and but the costs keep going up. We have to give them their raises, their step increases, their column moves. When we do that, they give us additional money, but then then the cash is cut. So I think the motion is a good one. We're just asking the city to recognize that if we continue to go up with the charge-offs, we have less money to fund education. So I just wanted to say that I agree with this.
Okay, thank you. The next report is a response to my motion of March 20 regarding salary trends. Ms. Turner?
The salary trends is another one that would be is quite long, so I'll just say this. Salary trends, if you look at our trends, it could be misleading. It looks like the large amounts that are listed on the city CFO's report, that's attachment 2, it shows a $10 million increase in 1 year. That's very misleading. We are not recklessly generous. Those amounts include 2 years of retroactive pay. When the contract ended in 13-14, negotiations began in 15-16 and 16-17. The year that it shows a $10 million increase, the teachers actually got 0% of a raise that year. So numbers can be misleading. So when I responded to this request, I used the state's average salaries. I used verified reports instead of the data that we could use in-house. If you look at attachment 3, I did 3 years of comparing Lowell to the state averages. We are fine, we're right on target. We're a little bit above, I think $1,000 maybe per year. And that, we're an urban district with urban district problems, so we're being compared to small towns. So we're fine, we're not being recklessly generous. And as far as the other areas of a salary trend analysis, if you look at the next attachment, it will show we have increases to our teaching staff, but if you look at the numbers, general ed teachers went from 897 teachers to 855, where SPED went up from 118 to 171. So we're not adding a bunch of extra staff, we're responding to state mandates. And the other comment is just in comparison to us with the nation. Yes, we're one of the top in the nation. Massachusetts is one that recognizes their teachers and tries to show appreciation through decent salaries. So in comparison to this country, we're doing okay.
Thank you very much for this report. I just had one quick question. When you mentioned how we do compared to the state, I believe you said it was attachment 3. Is that just comparing our teacher salaries across the state, or did you one that looked at specifically at similar urban districts?
That average includes everyone across the state. There were actually several pages, but the other cities that averaged close to what we had were other urban districts.
Okay,
Just-
thank you. I think this is very informative. Thank you very much. Now, the next report is a response to Mr. Hoey's motion of January 16 regarding pay to all unaffiliated staff. Ms. Turner?
The staff is very happy about this motion. There were raises for 50 unaffiliated staff. It was processed on 2/14. This raise will be included in the April 11th paycheck. The total cost was $53,000, and retro payments were included to ensure that the raise was effective as of January 1st per the original vote date.
Thank you very much. Next report is response to Ms. Martin's motion of July 25th regarding existing lawsuit. Madam Superintendent, or Ms. Turner, whoever's going to be answering.
So the motion to request information on us joining the existing lawsuit, as I studied the foundation formula and compared it to the actual spending and net school spend, in our net school spending compliance report, I can say that it was very evident that we definitely should join the lawsuit, which that doesn't mean much because we don't have to do any formal filing or anything. But as I was explaining earlier, the October 1st student count, using that factor and an assumed cost or different criteria by the state, the factors that they use to give us the funding. Well, there's an inadequate assumed cost. If you look at the attachments, the attachment 1 will show the foundation formula, and it shows all of the columns and what are considered when you're building the foundation budget. It's whether the children are preschool, middle, special ed, ELL, those type of considerations. The amount in the final column is what the government is saying, that's what they expect us to spend. Attachment 2 is taken right from the government's website, which is showing our compliance in these areas. We were, page 3, or the attachment 3 will show how much we've underfunded ourselves or how much we've underspent. We've underspent in maintenance, in instruction, and administration. Not because we choose to, but because we are significantly, the state's expected costs are significantly lower than actuals by $15 million in benefits alone. And by, tuition cost, they base their tuition reimbursement on an assumed rate of 3.75%. They base their estimated in-district number on an estimated number, and it was like 540. We have 2,400 kids that get some form of special ed services. So being significantly underfunded in these areas cause us to balance the budget by increasing our class sizes, cutting our regular ed teachers and those type of areas. This is what we're going to talk about on April 22nd. I think that, yes, we're inviting anyone, because the more people that we can get there, the more the government will see that maybe we don't need the lawsuit. Maybe they can make other adjustments. But
Thank you very much for that report. Ms. Martin?
Thank you, and thank you. I echo those thanks for pulling together the information. I do think the timeline of this is, when I had initially made this motion back in July of 2018, that was what had precipitated all the activity that is now culminated in the Promise Act. So this initial lawsuit was kind of what started the process. So, yeah, and I agree with you. Jumping on a lawsuit now is kind of a moot point, which is fine. But I do think as a committee, as a community, certainly lending our voice and our ambition to this, the conversations around the Promise Act, I think is some of the most important work that we can do to protect our schools in the upcoming years. So we'll talk, I'm sure, a great deal more about the April 22nd date and how important it is to have extremely strong representation from this committee, but more importantly from across our community, to really be able to drive home the point that the foundation formula is flawed. It is absolutely flawed, and it's this kind of analysis that makes it crystal clear that the expenses that come along with educating a diverse and dynamically changing district require and demand that we make that kind of investment in our district, in our teachers, in our administrators, in all the work that goes on in this, in our school district. So thank you very much for the information. I do think it was one of the best encapsulated kind of reports about the foundation formula, which has forever been this crazy Sphinx-like mystery that no one can ever point at. I really found this. I thought this was really well done and very, very helpful. Thank you.
Thank you. So the next report is regarding the Pledge of Allegiance.
Thank you. This is in regards to Mr. Dakota's motion to check with all principals to verify classroom teachers are reciting the Pledge of Allegiance every day. So on April 5th, I informed all staff that each teacher at the commencement of the first class of each day in all grades in all public schools, according to Mass General Law, recite the Pledge of Allegiance. And to ensure that, I also asked our administrators to convey that, potentially over the loudspeaker. Most of our schools have students actually say the pledge over the loudspeaker, and everyone else joins in daily. So that, keep it short and simple, we did it.
Thank you. Next report on motions. Any comments or questions about that? Seeing none. Report on enrollment figures. Madam Superintendent, or is there any questions or concerns about that? I guess you can all see it in front of you. No? Motion to accept reports of the superintendent 9.1 through 9.11 as reports of progress by Mr. Hoey, seconded by Mr. Dakota. All in favor? Accepted. New business. Motion to approve Janine M. Durkin as secretary to the Lowell School Committee by Ms. Martin, seconded by Mr. Dakota. Roll call.
Mr. Dakota?
Yes.
Ms. Doherty?
Yes.
Mr. Hoey?
Yes.
Mr. Lay?
Yes.
Ms. Martin?
Yes.
Ms. Nutter?
Yes.
Mr. Nutter? Mayor Samaras? 6 yeas, 1 absent, approved.
Motion to approve the budget transfer of $150,000 by Mr. Nutter, seconded by Ms. Martin. Roll call. Oh, Mr. Nutter?
Just a quick question. I know we have a deficit or potential deficit in the sick leave buyback. Is that why we found that we have some extra money from books?
No. You know, when we originally did our budget transfers, remember when I explained that because it took a little while longer than expected, some of the accounts were being spent. So when we originally did the $150,000, it was going to be from the computer account. Well, the technology account was already mostly depleted. So we found another way of doing, and by the way, this is being funded by a grant. So what's happening is we're doing expenditure transfers to move the cost to a grant. I mean, well, they're grant related, but that's why this is in here.
Roll call.
Mr. Dakota?
Yes.
Ms. Doherty?
Yes.
Mr. Hoey?
Yes.
Mr. Lay?
Yes.
Ms. Martin?
Yes.
Mr. Nutter?
Yes.
Mayor Samaras? 6 yeas, 1 absent, approved.
Motion to approve the M&L expenditure transfer of $567,881 by Mr. Nutter, seconded by Mr. Hoey. Roll call.
Mr. Dakota?
Yes.
Ms. Doherty?
Yes.
Mr. Hoey?
Yes.
Mr. Lay?
Yes.
Ms. Martin?
Yes.
Mr. Nutter?
Yes.
Mayor Samaras? 6 yeas, 1 absent, approved.
Motion to approve the healthcare general staffing agreement by Mr. Nutter, seconded by Ms. Martin. Mr. Nutter has a question, comment.
Superintendent, would you explain this a little bit, please?
Sure. We have a contract with a nursing firm that supports our students who go on field trips, who have medical concerns and require a nurse. In most cases, we would love to have the family member attend along with the child, but that's not always the case. We had contracted services with another agency for a number of years, and there are some challenges with the ability of the nurses relative to students with diabetes. So we have switched our services over, and we're trying this service. And I just brought it forward so that you were able to see that what we're doing.
I think we have a roll call. You need a motion to approve. Oh, motion to approve by Mr. Nutter, seconded by Ms. Martin. I thought we did that. Roll call?
Mr. Dakota?
Yes.
Ms. Doherty?
Yes.
Mr. Hoey?
Yes.
Mr. Lay?
Yes.
Ms. Martin?
Yes.
Mr. Nutter?
Yes.
Mayor Samaras? 6 yeas, 1 absent, approved.
Motion to adjourn, Ms. Martin, seconded by Mr. Dakota. All those in favor? Meeting adjourned.